Thank you. Thanks for taking the time to come in for this talk. Hopefully you won't find it boring. I'll try to keep it interesting. So the topic that I would like to focus today is how do we leverage machine learning for an impact in the healthcare space, and just want to talk about some of the use cases and how we have been leveraging driverless AI for some of these use cases. Also, the more specifically in the area of what we call as like emotional AI, or in simple terms, sentiment analysis, and how that's kind of helping us. So let's get started. As I was introduced, I'm Bharath. This is the rest of the team that has worked on this use case. Fortunate to actually work with SRK from the Kaggle Grandmaster from H2O for this NLP use case. It was really fun working with him and getting a good feel for working on some of the cutting edge algorithms that's out there today. So emotion AI, whenever we think about emotion, it's almost like skewed towards either facial recognition, speech recognition, or robots that can smile and do all sorts of emotion detection. But then it's moved beyond science fiction. It's at a place where especially text is a place where most of us spend our time. We spend more time, looking at our phone than talking to each other. So text is an area where it's pretty rich, and the kind of advances that's happened in the NLP space, there's a lot that we can do. Even there are a few things that even Sri touched on earlier in his keynote speech today. So one of the kind of barriers to any technology could be kind of pretty interesting and exciting, but then in order for it to kind of take off, it needs to reach a particular tipping point. And every technology needs, or every algorithm kind of needs a meaningful, impactful use case for it to then kind of reach the masses, even though it might have a lot of potential. And for all good reasons, all kinds of interesting problems that exist in healthcare, I believe that for NLP, healthcare is a pretty ripe field for application of NLP for solving a variety of these problems, and more specifically, emotion AI or kind of sentiment analysis in solving some of these problems, and actually creating a lot of impact across the masses rather than just subsets of users or niche users here and there. So we'll see one of the use cases that we have explored. So the problem that we are trying to solve, what's the problem? The problem is that today's consumers are not equipped to navigate the really complex healthcare system, especially if you're looking for a specialist. It's a daunting task trying to even understand what to ask for, what to look for in a specialist, in one type of specialist versus the other. Do you ask your friend? Do you ask your neighbor? Would they be correct? Would they be not? Do they actually know whether the physicians that they recommend had good outcomes or not? Do they have good complication rates or not? So we just sometimes go with a very irrational kind of just go out there in the web, search for, find me good doctors, top doctors, and then they may not be the top doctors for what you're looking for, right? So it's a complex maze wherein the patient is on one side, good physician is on the other side. Good physicians want to find and treat patients with specific diagnosis that they are really interested in, and it's this big maze that they have to kind of navigate through. So that's the problem that we are trying to solve for, and by doing so, if finding the right match solves half the problem. and you know what, not just in healthcare, in any situation. You find the right employee, you know, you can be productive. You find the right match for your, you know, as a partner, you know, you can be happy. So finding the right match is always kind of a very important, difficult thing to do, but once you do it, it has a big impact. So in this case, you know, it can actually save lives, because if you find the right physician, then you reduce the complication. You can have good outcomes. You don't need to go through, you know, subsequent, you know, surgeries and things like that. And, you know, most importantly, you know, there are no, you know, medical errors or other things that you reduce the probability of all of those things happening downstream if you make the good decision, you know, upstream. So that's where we come in. That's where we try to help, wherein, you know, we help the patient find the right physician. So magnitude of the problem, again, as I said, it's one of the, you know, biggest problems in healthcare. There is you know, a lot of issues, and medical errors account for you know, close to you know, the third in the overall you know, causes of you know, leading causes of you know, death as well. So it's a again, as I said, a meaningful, impactful problem to solve. And just by solving that one problem, it's the beachhead that's going to you know, propagate that value down the value chain. Okay, so let's look at how our behavior has changed over a period of time. Previously, we used to just kind of ask our you know, friends or neighbors about or you know, family about when we need help. We just ask them, and they give their opinion based off of 1 or 2 data points that they know of. It is not objective enough, and it's not convenient enough. So if my friend is, you know, suggesting something, I cannot say, oh, by the way, I need a physician in this particular area, you know, who can also treat these things. You know, I cannot put in like specific preferences. I can just say, hey, do you have a good suggestion? And then I just have to take it and kind of, you know, take it through. So that's one problem with that approach. Then people started asking, you know, just started going out there online and searching for good physicians. And what that, you know, the problem with that is there isn't enough kind of experiential or kind of descriptive aspect around it, wherein it's kind of like all over the place. So if I go and look for like, you know, 4-star rating, then I'll have to go down and then read through each of the reviews, understand each one's experience, and then based off of that, then make a choice. And, you know, again, that particular information might also be kind of flawed to an extent. So that problem exists on the other end of the spectrum. So the way we kind of think about bridging the gap is that since technology came between these two, now what if technology could actually understand the experiential side of what exists out there, bring it to the patient in an objective manner, and then use that experiential metric in addition to all the other things you will have to look for when you're kind of searching for a particular physician. So you have what we call as a hybrid approach, like a wisdom bridge approach, wherein you take the wisdom of the crowds from all the online reviews and everything else. You take the wisdom of the experts, wherein, you know, a good physician knows how to evaluate other good physicians. So they actually define these are the things that you need to go look for. So we take these two and then we kind of blend it in, wherein we apply sentiment analysis on the review side of things. We apply objective, you know, evaluation from you know, an expert system, an expert-driven kind of engine, and then we bring that together to come up with the best match. And then that still goes through an expert review before that expert suggested to you, saying, here's 3 matches for you. You know, here are physicians who satisfy your preferences, as well as they are good, and as well as they have good reputation, you know, online as to, you know, how they are. I'll quickly sift through this because, again, the problem with online reviews is there's like hundreds of them. Again, it's most of the current approaches are keyword-based ones, so it'll just say, parking, and, if it's a good parking, bad parking, synonyms, doesn't account for, things like that. So, and ratings are, highly subjective, so you just cannot go with a 1 star. 1 star could be about, kind of bad parking or didn't find a spot, so 1 star, but physician was good, and then, you've kind of like lost out on that aspect. And most importantly, it doesn't answer key questions that somebody has in their mind. It's just about, here's what I experienced, and, I just want to go there and type about it, and then, go about. So, there is still a translation process that's needed, wherein all the reviews and everything else is to be taken and aligned with what a consumer might be looking for. That brings us to the question as to what are the key questions that consumers are looking for, right? So what we have seen is that it primarily falls in 3 big kind of themes. One is treatment outcome. So first and foremost, do patients get better when they go with this particular physician, right? Which is the most important thing. And it's not just getting better, but are they able to get back to their normal quality of life? And there's a whole bunch of other things that go with it, rather than, whether the physician did their job, and, is that all it is? Because there's also, you have the office staff, you have the whole practice, and, there's also kind of possibility of complications that could happen beyond that. So all these things need to be kind of taken into account. So we specifically look for treatment outcomes. The second key question that patients might have, and this is true mainly for medical domains versus surgical domains, and also for primary care physicians, is attitude. So in a 15-minute office visit, you talk about the condition itself only for 5 minutes. The remaining 10 minutes, you're talking about generally what's going on in your life, and that's what you kind of talk to your physician about, and then get feedback on food and other aspects. But that's where if that interpersonal communication is key towards shared decision making, them actually understanding your context, and it's important as to whether that physician has and the office staff both have the right approach and the right attitude to kind of treat you the right way. The last and the most important key, but not least important key theme is communication. Are they able to clearly communicate your treatment options? Are they communicating well about kind of the various steps that's involved? Because lack of clarity creates a lot of anxiety for families when they go through this key event in their life, when they have a particular diagnosis and they are kind of getting ready for finding somebody who could do the right surgery for them. So there's a lot of emotions going on there. So it's very important for the physician and the office staff to bring about that clarity and hence instill a sense of peace and confidence. So these are things that what we call as this prompts, which is patient-reported outcome measures. These are patient-reported experience measures. And these are gaining popularity in the healthcare space because it's, as healthcare moves more towards value-based care, it's not just sufficient in saying, oh, I did my job, whatever happens downstream and all the costs that happens downstream or the outcomes that happen downstream, I'm not kind of, I don't need to be kind of attributed to it. This is as we move more towards consumerism of health, patient-centric care, these things matter more, wherein it is important to know whether the patient actually got better and what are the experience and the outcomes that they have had, and then to optimize the whole patient journey and the care journey off of that, rather than use some other arcane objective metric to kind of optimize against. So this is the direction where it's going. Healthcare is slow, not like unlike other fields, so it moves really slow, but we'll get there. Okay, sentiment analysis, probably know this, but it's an NLP approach that takes any given sentence and tries to figure out the positive, negative. It is slightly much harder than most people think because earlier approaches just used to be like a word-based approach. As I said, there are intricacies in sentences such as rhetorical devices like sarcasm, irony, there's subjectivity that we may need to kind of detect. So all these things, matter, and that actually impacts a lot on the results that you get. Example. So here's an example of a review, right? Clearly, the patient is, frustrated. But instead of if I just showed this particular sentence, and if there was a way for, if the patient had to go through a whole bunch of these sentences to figure out, about the physician and the staff, it would be pretty cumbersome. But here what we are saying is, what if we could take aspects of it, various aspects of it. So this again aligns with key questions that they ask, that they have in their mind, and based off of those questions, we are trying to understand specific aspects from these, and then for each of those aspects, we are trying to come up with predictions of positive versus negative, right? So this is different to like traditional sentiment analysis, wherein there'll be an overall positive or negative kind of sentiment to it. So, okay, how are we doing with time? Okay, so 3 minutes. 3 minutes? Okay, cool. Okay, so let me quickly sift through the slides. So, so one of the key insights that we had was that context matters a lot. So it's important to capture the context of any given sentence rather than just take different words and try to kind of match each of those words or things like that. So as a follow-up to that, we moved from our initial models, which was in driverless AI, and we used like TF, IDF based word-based models to then word-to-vec, vector-based models. We did see some promising results, but it wasn't enough for the purpose that we were kind of seeking. So, these were, again, the models for all 3 use cases. Beyond this, what we did was we went for language models. So the language models are different because in language models, you're able to kind of capture the entire context. It is also based on, few of them are kind of based on the concept of pre-trained models or transfer learning, wherein you could take a whole bunch of corpus of English language so that the model kind of understands enough about a general context, and then you can kind of train it specifically on your context. So that's pretty much what we did. There's a whole bunch of such models that are out there, like Elmo, ULMFit, OpenAI, and BERT. And we ended up using, this is a comparison of the 4 models that exist out there. You have like LSTM-based, transformer-based, and the difference is essentially, whether it's left to right, whether it's learning left to right, right to left, whether it's shallow, whether it's deep in terms of how much it learns overall. And this is again like just attention mechanisms, just like how you read through a sentence and you try to pay attention to the sequence. That's how these things learn as well. So let me quickly go to, so here's just a quick comparison of different models out there. And BERT is a breakthrough NLP model by open source by Google. So we use that to train our models. Performs really well. So for BERT-based model, we got pretty decent outcome on with results with treatment outcome. But then for the other ones, it was pretty good and consistent as well. So it's a very promising kind of area where we were able to take a pre-trained model and use it for the purposes of aspect-based, specific aspects based kind of sentiment analysis. By the way, this is just something that we did on the side. So this is not in driverless AI. This is not put in driverless AI. It's just a project that we did on the side by collaborating with the H2O team. The next step is, so we have a much more bigger corpus of unlabeled data. So the plan is to kind of continue, improving the model, but also see if we can kind of retrain the whole of the BERT and then see if we can get better results. Also, certain areas to focus is, subjectivity detection, identifying fake reviews using linguistic patterns. It's a pretty, again, hard problem, but a very interesting problem to solve and a very essential problem in this use case. So where does this kind of take us? The next frontier of, sentiment analysis is that we could actually go beyond just, overall sentiment scores. We can go to, aspect-based sentiment scores. And then even beyond aspects, once given the same approach, we can actually bring about, multiple classes of various emotions that we can detect. And it can be across these metrics of pleasantness, attention, sensitivity, aptitude. And it just opens a whole new world of various emotions that you can detect by using NLP methods. And anywhere you have like a consumer focus, you can use this to not only understand about a user, you can pretty much, you're giving a digital heart to your kind of AI systems or AI applications for it to understand the consumer better and bring about like a digital kind of an empathy solution in addition to all the other smarts that goes into your AI applications. So especially in healthcare, it's with patient-centric care, it's important that we understand the person behind the patient and not treat them as, here's somebody with these diseases. They are actually, a human, and there's emotions going on, there's personality, they have personalities, and that's what would be the next frontier of how we personalize these experiences. So just a summary of everything. So context matters. Physician review is a good use case for sentiment analysis, for it to be taken to the next level. Language models really help. BERT is very promising, and this is one of the use cases where we have kind of used BERT almost like as soon as it was kind of released open source, we took it up and started trying it out. And then the next few things that we are trying to do could get us closer to truly emotion-based analytics. So that's pretty much it. Thank you.
Thanks,
Any questions?
Thanks, Bharath. So we have a couple of questions on Slido. If you guys want to ask, you've got the card on your chairs. You can just log into Slido and ask questions. There are a few of them that are on Slido right now. If you can get those questions, that'll be great. Sorry, it's 1 minute, not 2 minutes. Okay, let's just ask the question out. Yeah, go ahead.
So did you have a two-stage model to actually determine which, thanks. Did you actually have a two-stage model so you can actually portion out which part of that review was, like, for example, discussing patient outcome, and then you did the sentimental model, you applied the language model to it?
So we did a human-based kind of labeling, the tagging of each review. So we had a set of labels to for training the models. Yes.
Right, but then how would you associate, like, there's like a positive sentiment to specifically, like, can you actually identify which part of the comment is talking about patient outcome then?
So we did kind of label it, but we actually didn't kind of use it, because when you look at language-based models, it pretty much kind of learns all word associations that exist in the review, and then those word associations are then kind of associated with the label that you're trying to predict. So so that kind of happens inherently given the structure of the language and the words that come frequently, or the patterns of those bigrams and trigrams that kind of comes frequently in the language corpus that you have.
Hi, thank you very much for your presentation. What percentage of the reviews do you think are likely to be fake?
It's a really good question. Based on kind of what we have seen, just using some of the like linguistic patterns and also like associations of like the same user based on the sources where we pull this data, we can in certain cases, not in all cases, but in certain cases we can actually see like user IDs kind of associated with it, right? So there's no kind of right or wrong way to go about doing it. But I would say it's roughly about 10-15% of the reviews, because it's mostly about so there's two things. One is fake. The other one is whether it is kind of curated by the institution or not. So fake reviews would truly be kind of fake reviews, right? Versus there could be a hospital that says, hey patient, you had a good outcome or a bad outcome. Could you actually go and give us a review here, right? And they'll actually follow up with the patient to the extent that they'll get that review from that particular patient, right? So and they may actually decide to kind of take out certain reviews that doesn't look good versus not, right? So if you may technically kind of either qualify it as a fake or not, but these two classes of reviews exist. So yeah, that's kind of like how I would kind of go about thinking about fake reviews. Yeah.
Yeah, and then we'll switch to slide.
Sure.
So yeah, it's related to the first question. So as I understand it, you're saying that at the end of your training process, you can associate different sentiments with different contexts of reviewing, say, like attitude or patient outcome, and that just falls out of your model naturally. That those contexts, that the embeddings learn how to associate the particular sentiment with these different questions you're trying to answer.
Yes. Cool. And we had multi-label to each review as well.
Yeah.
So if it was just kind of each label, then it goes back to his question about there's just kind of one label associated with that review. So how do you kind of associate that with other things? But this was initially we took a thoughtful decision to make sure that we try to make the labeling task as rich as possible, because again, like if you think about in practical terms, it's doing labeling is not the most interesting of things, and if you have to go back and relabel, and nobody wants to do that. So when you do it, you better do it better and richer, and just mark everything that you can actually see in that review, and then it's up to us how we use it. So that has actually helped us a lot. Thank you. All right, if there's no other question.
Bharath, you want to take a couple of questions? Maybe just comprehensively answer, because kind of running out of time.
Should I?
Oh, you can't see it. Here you go. Take this. Same question.
Okay.
You might want to read out the question.
Oh, sure. This approach may work well for physicians who have data versus new physicians who do not. Do you feel that matching algorithm has to be different for new practitioners? I think so, but we are able to associate reviews with physicians. And again, this is not be all end all decision making for the physician match process. It is one more aspect that adds more meaning to it. There's a whole bunch of other evaluation that we do. So the weighting on how much we actually use this, it's up to us as to how we can actually use it for a new physician versus not. But it I think boils down to sample size. So if there's enough sample size for that particular physician, even if they are a new physician, we can technically kind of use it towards this. How to vectorize whole paragraph? Isn't it worse to vectorize sentence? So we did start with at the sentence level, but we also tried using a character level CNN as well. And I believe that's one of the things that is in the roadmap, or it's in the process of already kind of being included in the driverless AI. So that's already going in there. So since we did it at the character level, it did help us. Initially, we did kind of do like a completely just like a word to vec, and we got some results, good results, and it wasn't like the best. So the character level definitely helped kind of capture the whole context as well.
Thanks. Thanks, Bharath, and
Thank you.
let's give him a hand for a start. Thank you.
Thank you.